Hello everyone and welcome to Magma Rage's episode 4. Today we're going to be talking about HCT points and HCT cup grinding in particular. And with me today I've got Menlyn, a fellow South African player, but playing all the way from Korea. How's it going, Menlyn?
Hey, how you doing, man?
Good, good. So you had a pretty good season, well, a pretty good month last month for February. You won one of the like HCT cups. Do you want to tell the viewers a little bit about HCT points and how they work?
Yeah, sure, man. So basically, the HCT points are what you need if you want to qualify for the spring championships, winter championships, or summer championships, which eventually gets you to BlizzCon. And there are two ways you can really earn points. The one way to earn points is to get a high ladder finish. Um, You get minimum points if you hit legend, and then as you get higher, you get more points. And the other way you can score points is by playing and doing well in the HCT Cups.
Yeah, so I mean we can see here we've got the split for the various points. So like as you mentioned, the higher up on like legend you rank, the better you get. So like first is like 12 points for instance, scaling all the way down to 1 just for making legend. And then obviously there's the monthly cups, which is the sort of main topic for today. And the monthly cups, one of the tricks to them is that you can only earn points from one monthly cup in a month, as the monthly part might suggest. So if you win a monthly cup, you get 5 points. Coming second, you get 3. Third to fourth, you get 2. And for top 8, you get 1 point. So the majority of these cups are range from 128 man cups to 512, and there's like various different websites that you can play on. But before we get into the details of like how to play cups, let's just talk a bit about the cup system. So, what are your thoughts on the cup system, Menlyn, having been somebody that tends to play quite a lot of cups like myself?
Yeah, I actually quite enjoy playing in the Cups. It's completely different from playing in ladder. I find ladder, I generally get to legend and then the grind gets pretty tedious. It's always
Yeah.
the same decks. You have to play, you're playing one deck, you're always playing against the other decks, the other, top tier decks, and it gets pretty boring. Playing the cups is it's really you playing, tournament style. Normally you're playing Conquest, you're picking 4 decks and 1 ban. It's a lot more interesting to play, I find, and
Yeah.
there's, people are a lot more creative. You'll find a lot of interesting decks that you wouldn't normally see on ladder because they weak to the meta as a whole. But in a tournament, you can make them work. You can build a lineup that does well against certain decks, and you can use those. And I find, playing the cups. It takes a while. Usually, it takes about, geez, if you go all the way, I mean, it takes about 5 or 6 hours, but
Yeah.
if you have a bad start, I mean, it's just, you're out in one round, it's 1 hour, it's 3 games, and it's pretty quick. So, um, I enjoy the cups, but as I was, even if you play well, and you think you're a good player, like I like to think I am, though I'm probably overrating myself a bit, you're not going to do well every single time. You're going to have to you're going to have to grind quite a few cups to get a good finish, and you really want to get that high finish, like the first place, so you get the 5 HCT points.
Yeah, you really need to max out on your points. And as you mentioned, like there's a lot of pros that you'll see in these cups. Established pros like Green Sheep or Gara or Tice. And sometimes you're going to play them, which is obviously really fun and exciting for up and coming players. But you'll see even in these tournaments, they don't necessarily get that far. I mean, you often see like maybe Pavel will drop like first round. He's the world champion, so that says a lot. Like it takes a lot of grinding. As I said, you've got to just keep going at it. Like even if you're losing first round, you've got to just look at your strategy and see if you can improve on it. And like to me, as you mentioned, sort of that extra strategy that comes with building lineups for tournaments is the really interesting part. And you get to play out a lot of like matchups you might not play on ladder. So like if ladder is just full of Pyro Warrior and Aggro Shaman, and you're sick of those decks or something, you can just ban one of them and bring some like decks to sort of target the other, or you can target other decks that you expect. Like let's say you could target Reno Lock and Conquest or something like that. And personally, I find that like a lot more interesting than playing ladder. Like personally, I struggle to really grind ladder that hard. So yeah, as you were saying, like I think that that aspect of the cup play is like really interesting.
Oh yeah, definitely, man. Like I've played quite a few cups, and as you mentioned, there are a lot of name players in them. I think in January I finished third in a cup, and Ostkaka finished second. So it's that kind. It's a lot of
Yeah,
known players. You kind of almost every cup you play in, you'll look through the list and you'll see known players. And if you're unlucky or lucky, depending how you look at it, you might get to play them, and it's a nice opportunity for players to kind of have a shot at playing against some of the best in the world and even, coming out on top occasionally.
yeah. And like one of the other fun things is that you actually get to know the community a bit better. So like I've found um, a lot of people that I now recognize that I might not have recognized from before, from like not having playing open cups. The people that you see like all the time in cups, and you sometimes you play against them every now and like sometimes they sort of stay on your friends list. I mean, generally I tend to remove most people after games, but sometimes you end up having a nice chat with your opponent, and I generally find the environment a lot more friendly than ladder. Like, if somebody sends you a friend request after a game on ladder, most of the time I just reject it because it's not going to be
Well,
like,
he's going to be talking about your mom and, what she's
yeah,
going to do and whatnot. So it's
yeah,
at least
it's
you
yeah.
definitely get, I think it's a better person, a nicer person in the cups. Generally, you're going to meet.
Yeah, yeah. So like, often you have some like interesting conversations, and then, uh, you know, like for instance, you get some players that sort of stay on your friends list, and then you can see they're like really high on ladder already, like rank one, almost about to hit legend, like first week of the season, and you're like, okay, this is like really motivating. I now need to sort of push a bit more because, like, oh, I can see these other people are doing it. Why aren't I like pushing a bit more?
Yeah, sure. I think it's nice to see. And like, I was actually chatting to a guy today, who I think beat me in a cup earlier. Like, he just hit legend today, and he was telling me his deck list, and it was just interesting, to talk about
Mm.
it. And and he was a decent guy. So yeah, I've got a lot of people on my friends list from the cups. I probably should remove a few of them, but haven't gotten around to it just yet.
Yeah, I've also had some really good conversations. That's one of the most interesting or some of the most interesting conversations I've had after games is just like, what was that deck that you were playing? Like that was quite interesting. Like why are you running double Ancient of War and like Druid of the Claw or something? And then you're like, okay, that's quite an interesting Druid deck. And then you're like, okay, how does it do in these kind of matchups? You can sort of talk to some of your opponents, and most of them are relatively open about it because the chance they're going to play you again specifically is like relatively low. I mean, I've played a bunch of repeat opponents, but like generally they can be relatively open with the information. So people can be uh, pretty nice like after games in the cups.
Oh yeah. I mean, even if you do play the guy again, it's going to be, a cup a few days later, and I mean, his lineup may have changed completely. So it's not like he's giving you have an advantage going into that match by knowing his lineup and him giving you the information. It's
Yeah,
just, he's happy to share, and if people are pretty proud if they've come up with a pretty good deck that beats the tournament meta.
yeah, yeah. One of the most painful things sometimes actually that I find about cups is the wait. So like if your games are quick and you're doing well, then it can be really difficult sometimes having to wait. Like I've had to wait about an hour at like 12 a.m. for like my next game, and I find that like pretty difficult. Just like staying in the zone for Hearthstone, so to speak.
Oh, definitely, man. Like that's, I think, one of the worst parts because, like the first round is always a bit of a, from the admin point of view, it's like always the most work.
Yeah.
Some people don't show up and there's delays, and every so often you get a match where both players have checked in, but neither of them showed up, and nobody picks up that no one's actually been playing this game. So you only find out an hour later, and then it slows the whole bracket down a bit.
Yeah.
So you definitely, if you're playing, three aggro decks, you're going to finish quickly. And as you say, you probably, at some point, you're going to be waiting for an opponent,
Yeah.
and then, but I think, I mean, I'd say on average over the course of the tournament, it's about an hour per round, maybe a little bit less.
Yeah. Yeah.
But, you might play your first two rounds 30 minutes each, and then you're going to have to wait an hour to catch up for everyone else to catch up to you, or
Yeah, the majority of the time, personally, I find my opponent's already waiting for me because I tend to sort of take my time on my turns, even with like, aggro decks. I'll still make sure I've like counting everything properly and planning like, a couple turns ahead, even on like the really early turns. So, I probably play a bit slower than a lot of other players. So then I tend to find it's, just game after game after game, which can sometimes be really nice. Like actually sometimes not having that break is pretty good. You just keep your momentum going. Um, but sometimes you maybe need like a 5 minute break to clear your head or something.
so you're saying when I'm waiting for an hour for my next match, it's because someone was playing against you earlier in the bracket.
Yeah, hopefully you'll be waiting for me then, because that means I would be
Uh,
winning.
yeah,
Yeah.
sure, man.
Yeah, so I think let's talk a little bit about your situation. So, or like, okay, the difference between our situations. So, like, I'm playing from South Africa, which means that, and I live in South Africa, which means that I'm playing sort of to qualify for EU preliminaries, whereas you are South African as well, but living in Korea these days, which means you're playing to qualify for the Asian Pacific prelims, which sort of changed their format a lot very recently to sort of match what Europe and the Americas are doing. Like, how do you find that different sort of the idea of qualifying
Um,
for APAC at least rather than EU?
yeah, so sorry. Yeah, so the BlizzCon whole system, it's based on your residency. So I've been living in Korea for a while now. So obviously I'm a Korean resident, so I have to qualify through the APAC system. And last year it was completely different from the EU system. You'd have individual qualifiers for each sub-region in APAC. There would be one for Australia and New
Mm.
Zealand, one for Japan, one for Korea, one for Southeast Asia, and so on. And then the, the winners of that would go to the APAC uh, preliminary, so they would have the top eight. But now it's pretty much the same system as EU. All the players from the APAC region earn points, and then they all play the same preliminary, the top 64 player preliminary to qualify for the spring championship or summer championship, as it
Yeah.
is. Um, what is interesting about APAC is actually that not everyone plays on the Asia server though. The Asia server is for players from Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Hong Kong, and Macau. All the other countries in the APAC region, Australia, New Zealand, and then Southeast Asia, Singapore, Malaysia, and that, they actually play on the North American server.
Mm.
So you don't actually meet a lot of like half the players play on one server, half the players play
Yeah.
on another server. So they don't actually meet on ladder and cups or anything like that. If they make it to the spring preliminaries, the players from playing on North America server, Blizzard gives them special accounts for that event for them to
Yeah.
use. So, you often see, there are a lot of players like people from Australia, like you never actually see them on the Asia ladder. They're all playing on NA.
Yeah, like Navi
So,
Ut or you
like
know.
Naviet, yeah, he's, plays on the NA ladder, not on the Asia ladder. So you don't actually meet a lot of the players. It's not as tight knit as, I suppose, the European community. Like within like Korea and Japan, it's very tight. But, as the whole APAC, it's quite very separated. Also, everyone speaks a different language, so there's no like
Yeah.
specific APAC community, and it's a bit annoying because there are far fewer cups and events on APAC than there are on EU or NA. We were talking about the cups earlier, and there are maybe 4 or 5 cups a day on NA or EU.
Yeah.
On Asia, there's maybe 1 or 2 per week, so it's like far fewer opportunities to qualify and earn your points, but the thing is, you can actually earn points on any server, and they go back to your home region. So
Yeah.
if you win a cup on NA, you'll get your points on your EU account, or if I win a cup on EU, I'll get the points on my APAC account. So I generally spend most of my time playing cups on EU or NA as opposed to Asia because there's far more opportunities to do so.
Yeah, yeah. Yeah, I imagine for you though in particular, like time zone's pretty rough playing on like EU or NA servers is or like for their cup times.
Yeah, actually, NA is not too bad because the cups are kind of, I suppose, they start like I mean, some of them are late morning for me. There's some that start
Okay.
like 10 a.m., 11 a.m. So if, on a Saturday or whatever, it's not too hard to play them. And then on the weekend, I'm up late, so I'll play those. But yeah, during the week, I generally don't play any cups at all. It's usually, I might play a couple on the weekend, that's about it.
Yeah.
But
So
what I do like, no, go ahead, man.
no, go ahead.
I was going to say with the cups, what I do like is if you play like say on a Saturday night, if you don't have anything better to do, they often like cups running say from South African time. The first one starts at say 7 p.m. Then there's one at 8 p.m., 9 p.m., 10 p.m. So you can play the first one at 7. If you're doing well, you just stay in that one. Or if you get knocked out, you can just jump
Yeah.
into the one that starts an hour later or 2 hours later or 3 hours later. You can often, if you're not having a good night, you can wind up actually playing, 3 cups in a single evening.
Yeah, so like if we look at the schedule here, for example, for like uh, tonight, so for Tuesday, because this is pre-recorded, for Tuesday there's like one at 7 or two at 7, two at 8, and then one at 9. So like what I tend to do at least, and I think probably what most players do is you'll play the 7 o'clock one, but you'll register for like pretty much all of them. You'll check into some of the others whilst you're playing, and then if you are doing well in maybe the 7 o'clock one, you'll stick in that one and just concede in the others, or not check in, uh, or you'll sort of stick with the one that has like the best percentage. So sometimes maybe if you're playing like a 5-12 one at 7, and you get through the first round, so then you're in sort of the round of 256. But the one you play at 8 already starts the round of 128. You might actually just stick with that one instead. So yeah, I mean, it's always beneficial to register sort of for as many of the cups as possible, because all the websites also tend to have different sort of registration systems. Like Strivewire, it's basically just the first people to check in get the slots. But on other websites like Battlefy, it's whoever registered first gets the slots, and then if the people that registered don't check in, then the people on the waiting list, in order that they were on the waiting list, get the slots, I believe. So, every website is different, and every website has like its nuances as well, um, which I think we'll get into first, get into just now. But first, I also wanted to ask you about the South Korean scene. Like, have you been to many offline events in South Korea?
Um, I've been to a couple. I've been to like one or two, I suppose you'd say fireside gatherings.
Yeah.
They're pretty, I suppose it's pretty, there's a lot of people. Usually you actually have to register before because they've only got 32, they can only have 32 people and they, they fill up pretty quickly.
Yeah.
And they do lots, it's like more, they have like a competition, but then they have lots of like side events and fun, like quizzes and stuff like that. There's a lot more, I suppose, entertainment stuff as opposed to just, playing competitively.
Yeah.
And then there was a major, I went to 2015, end of 2015, Korea Masters, and that was quite
Okay.
interesting actually, because you had to register before online, and there were like way too many people registered to try to join. So they made like a cutoff. You had to have reached legend in order to enter this tournament. And then I went to the event, and there were over 600 people playing at the event live.
Wow.
So,
That's
it
crazy.
was like, yeah, you had to play the first weekend, and then the top 32 from the first weekend made it to the second weekend,
Yo. Was
which I didn't make it, unfortunately. But
uh,
yeah, I mean, it was so many people and so many people. These are 600 people who made the journey to a live event who had all reached legend.
yeah.
It was pretty hectic.
Yeah.
But
Well. Yeah, I was going to say Korea's traditionally always, really enjoyed their esports. I mean, they've taken to a lot of esports there, so the community is, assume, a lot more um, quick to jump on, like a newer esport as it was then, in 2015.
yeah, sure. Yeah, no, at the moment there don't seem to be any major tournaments and stuff happening in Korea. There are a lot of Korean streamers and stuff, but I think, I don't know if Hearthstone is as popular as it was, a year or two ago.
Yeah. I mean, from what I understand, like Overwatch is a lot more popular there these days, um, or at least it was last year. I don't know about recently.
No, I think Overwatch is still, yeah, the most popular game in Korea now. Because actually, Overwatch is free to play in Korea.
Oh wow.
They use a different model from uh, other places. If you go to an internet cafe in Korea, you can uh, you just play for you just log in and you can play for free. And then the internet cafes pay Blizzard a royalty,
Huh.
based on how
Yeah,
many
yeah.
hours the person plays through them. So actually, it's free to play. So there's so many people, kind of jumped in and got into it, and
Huh.
yeah, it's really popular here.
Yeah, that's a pretty cool model. Like at least Blizzard doing an interesting model for that suits the environment. But
Yeah, sure.
yeah, back to Hearthstone. Um, before we go on a real Overwatch detour, we were talking a bit about some of the websites, the different websites that you can play cups on. So, what have your like experiences been? Which are sort of the websites that you sort of enjoy playing on slash using the most, and which ones do you like? Like which is the website you don't really want to sign up for unless it's the only cup in that time slot kind of thing?
Geez, I won't talk about the ones I don't really like because I generally like my favorite's probably Battlefy. I find it's got the most information. Like it's got the brackets are pretty detailed. It's got stats. You can see
Yeah,
the actual scores in the games. It shows the status the game is in. So
yeah.
we were talking about earlier. If you can see how your opponents are doing. Is the score 2-0 or have they even started? So I think it's my favorite site to play on. Strivewire is probably a close second.
Yeah,
You know,
Strivewire have recently redone their site. I was never a really big fan of their site before. They do have that annoying like notification that plays, which can be quite useful actually especially if you're waiting for a while and you don't know when your game's going to be ready. Because if you miss your check-in for like each game, so like each game you'll generally have 5 to 10 minutes depending on the website to actually
yeah.
check in for that game, and if you miss that, then you basically concede the game. So it's really annoying if you get to like a further round and then you just don't see when your opponent's ready, and then all of a sudden you just the
Yeah, if
miss
you're
the
not
game.
refreshing every 5 or 10 minutes, it can happen.
Yeah, so at least Strivewire, probably the biggest plus for them in my book is that they play that like trumpety sound when your
Yeah,
game's ready, which is pretty useful. But yeah, like Battlefy, as you mentioned, I also find pretty useful. I think the whole fact that they were sort of one of the first few websites to integrate the pick ban stuff properly. So you
yes.
could much more easily pick ban in the website. Like some websites I find, like Match Arena, they don't say anything about pick or ban. So they say that uh, like their default is to do it via chat, which is really awful because whoever goes last usually, and either the pick or the ban is advantaged because they have all the information and then they get to make a last decision. So if you go in there with like a deck of each class, because basically for all these tournaments you can't have two decks of the same class on your deck selection screen. We'll go through the like process just now, but if you go there with like a deck of each class, then you can kind of pick your last class just to like best counter your opponent's lineup, which is a little bit of an unfair advantage depending on basically who gets
Oh,
to go
definitely.
last in that
Yeah,
order. Yeah,
yeah.
so
I
like
would.
the ones that have the integrated picking stuff is much nicer, I find.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. I also wanted to say with choosing which tournaments to play, like which sites. There's generally it depends what you're looking for. Some tournaments offer actual prizes.
Yeah.
In addition to the HCT points. I think there's one tournament that's once a week. I think it offers $500 or something like that. There's a prize
Yeah,
pool,
the good gaming one.
a good gaming one,
Yeah.
and
That
so some
one's
actual.
huge though.
Yeah, so they are some offer actual prizes, like I mean that's like $500 or even $1,000. I think it sometimes is, and
Yeah.
others just offer HCT points. So depending what you're looking for, I mean, if you actually want a shot at winning some real money, then you probably have to go through a bracket of at least 512, possibly much more than that.
Yeah.
If you're just looking for the points, I mean, you can often find tournaments with under 128, somewhere between 64 and 128, which your chance of winning obviously is that much higher.
Yeah. Yeah, 64 is the minimum basically for it to qualify for HCT points. But most of the cups probably they pretty much cancel if they don't get 64. Um,
Yeah.
Sometimes I like to aim for the 64 or close-ish ones as much as possible, just to sort of maximize my odds as well. Or like 128. 128 I find is a pretty sweet number.
Yeah, I think
Sometimes you
128 because the cap has to be one. They have to have 128 slots.
yeah.
So you want to go for a 128 that's not overbooked, so to speak. It's
Yeah.
kind of like looking it's going to hit about 80 or 90 people.
Yeah. So like I find for the 128 ones, the ESGA .gg ones, these ones which on the Blizzard schedule are just listed as like Tuesday night cup, Wednesday night cup. Those are pretty good for that. They also have a decentish pick ban system. Um, and the trick with those is you want to sign up for them as far in advance as possible. Signing up on the day for those is a bit tricky. So like what I tend to do is sign up for all the ones that are open for sign up as far in advance as I can, because those prioritize the people that are that sign up first. So they prioritize in sign up order, and those tend to fill relatively quickly. But yeah, I mean, I've had some interesting matches. I played Gara the one weekend in like the first round in that cup. So and you often see like Tice and Pavel, and so it's a tough
Didn't
cup,
you
but
play
pretty interesting.
just last weekend? I think you played I Kill You.
No, no, I played Bunny Hopper,
Oh, Bunny Hopper, sorry.
like yeah, on Monday, no, Sunday or something. Yeah, just this last weekend. Um,
Yeah, he's like top 10 EU.
yeah, yeah.
So, I
So
mean, there you go.
yeah, yeah, you can play some like top players. I remember even in like 2015 when I was just playing cups uh, casually for like EU cups. I remember playing Nyman, but that was kind of after his ban, and he wasn't really well known in the scene. And yeah, I mean 2015 wasn't really a great year for him. I just
No,
remember
it
him being
wasn't.
really salty in the cup. But anyway, um, yeah. So the process for all these um, cups is relatively similar. Most of them tend to be conquest, four pick one ban. The one that's sort of cropped up recently, which is a bit different, is Wall of Heroes, which at the Esports Wall website, which is the one that one of our own local casters has been adminning quite a bit, and I think it was scheduled to cast some of it, Penguin. That one tends to be last hero standing, which is sort of unique-ish in the cup scene, in that most of them tend to be conquest. The only other last hero standing one is that good gaming one that you were talking about, the big prize money one. So
Yeah,
you need to know your formats to sort of like optimize your chances as well.
sure. Yeah, I played the Wall of Heroes one last weekend. I finished in the top four.
Yeah,
But that cup, like, I think the last hero standing actually scares away a lot of people because, I mean, there were what, just 60, no, maybe 65 people in the cup actually.
yeah, yeah,
So it was just at the minimum amount, you know?
yeah,
And then other cups running at the same time, had over 200 players. So
yeah,
I think, the last hero standing does scare a lot of people away. But
yeah. I think
if it's a
that's definitely
format you
true.
like, it's a good opportunity to play in a smaller cup and increase your chances.
Yeah, I have found over the last few days as I've been playing in that cup over the weekend and this week that the pool is really stacked in that cup as well. You see like Tyler and Green Sheep, and I mean that's where I played Bunny Hopper first round as well. So like that cup is pretty tough because I think the pros see it as like, well, the less people the better, because they have to back themselves to be better than the majority of players. So even if a tough pool is not going to scare them off, just having to play less rounds is like optimal for them. We also see like players like Show and Nyria were also like streaming and playing open cups last night. And I think for a lot of the pros, one of their benefits is that they tend to have European and North American accounts. So for them, they tend to play like late into the night if they live in Europe, playing like NA cups, which I think you do as well. You play both NA and EU.
Yeah, yeah, definitely. I think they just I think everyone's trying to get the points they need, and like obviously having more opportunities and trying to find uh, the, the best cup, the one where maybe with the smallest field or where your chances are the best, is what a lot of people are trying to do. So I think, yeah, that Wall of Heroes, it seems like we're not the only people who've worked out that that's a bit of a smaller pool and you're going to get a pretty stacked field.
Yeah. So speaking of like sort of tips for players, do you have any other like general tips for players going into cups? You know, tips on like mentality or like how to prepare or which cups to play or which cups to avoid, anything like that.
Yeah, like I think when it's preparing a solid deck lineup, I think is really important. Um, you know, it depends what you're trying to achieve out of the cup. If you're trying to, just play for fun and, have the experience, then just play what you like and see what works. If you're trying to, try to get some points and do well, I would, go for a solid lineup, classes and decks that you have experience with, but also things that, are going to maybe beat the tournament meta. For example, if you know everyone's playing things like aggro pirate warrior or aggro rogue or even aggro shaman, you're slipping in a heavy control deck like a control warrior.
Yeah.
You can often get a win, almost guarantee a favorable matchup with that.
Yeah. Yeah, and I think one of the interesting things I found over the last month was how the meta shifted as well with the different prelims that happened. So like after the NA prelims, we saw a lot more of the like triple aggro or quadruple aggro lineup. So knowing what's going on in the scene is also really useful for knowing sort of which decks to play when, and just learning from your experiences. So maybe like now when post patch, it's a bit of a tumultuous meta. So it's kind of like you've got to try different lineups maybe sometimes and see what works. Like last month, I also tried like various different lineups, even though I had the one that I was pretty sure was the sort of optimal lineup for me at least.
Oh, yeah, I definitely agree. I mean, when I was playing cups last weekend, just after the patch it, we were talking about it, and I was saying like, I don't really care how I do in this cup. I just want to, get a hang for the decks and see how the lineups work. So I was playing, a couple of just decks I liked and wanted to see how they worked out, and some of them did pretty well, and others, underperformed. So
Yeah.
it's just, like more of, I suppose, it was just practice as opposed to trying to, cash in and win it.
Yeah, I mean, sometimes you might take a deck that you think, well, maybe this deck's kind of good in the meta. Like I've taken Freeze Mage or like the Miracle Freeze Mage into a couple tournaments, and then you play it and you're like, oh, it's Conquest and I can't get a single win with this deck. I played 3 games in 2 different series in 2 different cups that all like went 0-6 with this deck. Okay, my theory crafting about this deck was wrong. It's just
Yeah,
not good enough.
sure.
Yeah, so like learning from those experiences is sometimes a bit difficult mentally. You've got to like not be discouraged when that happens.
Oh, for sure. I mean, like, you often know what, the lineups are pretty standard. Like, at the moment, I'd say a standard lineup involves a Pirate Warrior,
Yeah,
probably a mid-range Shaman,
yeah, the mid-range Jade
um,
version.
mid-range Range version Shaman, I mean, which always gets banned. And then I'd say Aggro Rogue is probably the most common deck as a third choice at the moment.
Yeah,
And, fourth slot, I mean, a lot of people are putting in, like, Druid. The Jade Druid's pretty popular, as well as, like, some form of, or possibly a Reno deck, like either Reno Mage or Reno Warlock.
yeah. I think we've definitely seen a
So,
rise of Jade Druids recently to sort of counter the Reno Lock and the Reno
mm,
Mage, which were really popular before.
yeah. And even, like, a deck that you don't see often on ladder so much, like the Tempo Mage is actually really popular in the tournament scene,
Yeah,
because it can often get a win against those aggro decks. It's just, it's really quick against those. So you'll see those kind of decks. But, if know what you play 1 or 2 cups, you get, say, 2 or 3 rounds in, you kind of get an idea, feel for what the meta is, and you can kind of build your lineup based on that.
yeah. So for like first-time players, do you want to go through the process? Like the whole the screenshotting and the deck selection kind of thing, or like let's say for like Battlefy, just to give first-time players an idea, so they don't like stuff up and lose on like a technicality or
Technicality.
something. Yeah,
Yeah, sure. So on Battlefy, for example, once your game is ready, you'll get a notification, and then you have 10 minutes, as we mentioned earlier, to click you ready. Once you've clicked you ready, you're going to add your opponent as a friend, and then you're going to challenge each other. And then you're going to challenge each other. Sorry.
Yeah.
Once you guys have challenged each other and you're in the challenge screen, at this point it's really important to make sure you only have one deck for each of your classes. So if your classes are Rogue, Warrior, Shaman, and Druid, make sure you only have one deck for each of those classes. If you have more than one deck, you can be disqualified.
Yeah. So like
So,
one of the best ways to do that is to just switch the deck to wild, either convert it to wild or remove a single card from it. Um, and then it'll either have the red X or be in wild, and you'll always be in a standard duel. So, you know, that like often I have two or three rogues that I'm testing, and I'll just turn them to wild so that I make sure I only ever have one rogue that's actually playable.
sure, that's good advice. And then once you're there, you should take a screenshot of your deck screen. And players usually exchange screenshots. It's optional if you want to exchange, but I find probably 80 or 90% of my opponents ask for a screenshot.
Oh, really? I
And
find most of
then,
the time these days people don't necessarily ask, but in particular in later rounds, I find that's when people, you know, uh, like people will take the default win whenever they can get it, you know. Like it kind of just makes sense. It's the same thing with like if you queue a band class, uh, then you know you're going to give your opponent a default win in that game a lot of the time. So
yeah.
yeah,
So yeah, you have the screenshot and you can upload it to Imgur or another site that you like, and then you start your game. It's conquest, so it's usually conquest. So once you win with that class, you can't play it again. And as you mentioned, make sure you don't queue with the wrong class. Like
yeah,
if he's banned your shaman, don't queue with your shaman. Otherwise, you lose a game.
yeah,
Or if you've won with warrior, don't queue with warrior again. Otherwise, you lose a game.
yeah, yeah.
And
Which is something that can
yeah,
sometimes be sort of hard to keep track of when you've been playing like so many series. Sometimes
definitely.
it's definitely useful to actually write it down. I mean, that's what I did when I sort of started playing a bit more competitively, is I generally had like pen and paper and I would write down my four classes and my opponent's four classes. And then sort of I'd look at that for a bit and figure out what to ban. Because you know, you really need to look through the different matchups sometimes to figure out what to ban. Or a lot of the time in Conquest, you'll just have a strategy like ban Shaman, and then you're always going to ban Shaman.
Seems to be a
But
good strategy at the moment.
yeah, yeah. I've tried recently in like that Wall of Heroes one to like ban Pyro Warrior instead of Shaman. Yeah, it didn't really work out that well. I got like
The
2-0'd
only
by
problem is if
Shaman.
they don't have shaman, like it's really hard to decide what to ban.
Yeah.
But if they've got shaman, just ban shaman.
But most people have Shaman. Like
Yeah.
even post nerf, pretty much, you know, most people are bringing it because the Jade version is so strong against a lot of the control decks.
Yeah. And then lastly, at the end of each game that you win, take a screenshot of the victory screen so you
Yeah.
can upload it to the site. Battlefy, there's a place to upload the screenshots. Sometimes you have to upload the screenshots. Other times you only need to keep them just in case there's a dispute. Every so often some player will say, "Oh no, I won the game," when actually he didn't win the game. So just keep the screenshots just in case.
Yeah, it's definitely good to have those screenshots. I don't generally tend to find many disputes, but it can sometimes happen, especially if your opponent like picks the wrong class or something like that. You know, make sure you screenshot that as well, just so you have proof of everything. You know, my desktop is just full of like Hearthstone screenshots for days, just from like tournaments. You know, you just got to get in the habit of screenshotting like every win. Sometimes I get so in the habit I even screenshot ladder wins, like, and I'm like, wait, what am I doing? This is ladder. I don't need a screenshot.
Sure. Unless it's a good one, then it's okay.
Yeah, yeah, sometimes you screenshot the really stupid boards that you have or really interesting boards, but yeah, sometimes you do like I I also find the best is to screenshot when the actual victory thing comes up. That way, you're not revealing any information about your deck as much as like if you screenshot like just as his hero explodes, then your opponents, if they can see your screenshots on most websites, they can't, but if they can, then they can actually see some of the cards in your deck to get an idea of the archetype of your class rather than just knowing your class in general.
Sure.
So yeah, and most of the websites don't necessarily make you lock in classes. I'd say Battlefire is the one that makes you lock in classes for the whole tournament, and the majority of the rest of them just tend to like each round you'll select. So sometimes, if even if you're feeling a bit something's a bit weak in your lineup, sometimes you can change it unless you're playing on Battlefire. And even if you're playing on Battlefire, you can change the archetype within the classes that you're playing. So, don't be too afraid to tweak your lineup if you think it's really bad. But, it's unlikely you're winning if your lineup is really bad. So most of the time, I don't really find I tweak my lineup much during a tournament.
Yeah, no, I never adjust my lineup during a tournament, but the option is there. Sometimes, last tournament actually I played and I put an X, I deleted one card and put an X through the wrong Druid deck. So I was actually playing an OTK
Yeah, I remember
Cthulhu
that.
Druid in the tournament. And, obviously after that round, which I managed to somehow scrape through, I changed back to my Jade Druid. So, you can change your archetype after each round. You're not stuck with the same deck for the whole tournament if you want to change.
Yeah. So, for any players that are interested in sort of following up on our advice and stuff, I would suggest you go to the BattleNet website, and if you look on their website, you can see a sort of schedule of all the cups with options to set your region, and you want to be looking for cups rather than majors, because majors tend to be like offline events like DreamHack. I'll put links in the show notes on YouTube and stuff, so you can go there to check them out. And one of the most painful things I find is signing up to the websites the first time you do it. So a good tip I would have for that is to actually maybe have an email address you use exclusively for Hearthstone, and that way you can just use that one to sign up for all these websites, so they don't like spam your primary email address with notifications or something. 'Cause some of them tend to like notify you when like an hour before check-in or something.
Yeah, there's the one site I think I play on a lot of the Asian Cups. They actually send you an email notification before each match.
Oh wow.
So you play in a cup and you check email afterwards, and then you've got like 15 emails from them.
Yeah,
It's painful.
the ESL website does that after the matches. So it sends you a notification to say that the match has been closed. And you're like,
Oh,
I don't
that's very
really need
helpful.
that. Yeah.
They send
They,
you an email notification to tell you that you missed your check-in and that you've been disqualified.
yeah. Sometimes I've gotten those from websites as well. The ESL website doesn't host that many cups, but they do have occasionally. One of the nice benefits of it is if you make top four in one of their cups, I think that's the minimum. Then you get through to like a cup for that month with other people that top forward. I didn't even know about this, to be honest, until the other day. I all of a sudden got an email from them saying I'd been invited to like a 16-man cup, essentially, not for HCT points at all, but it had like €100 prize money for first, and like 75 for second, and like 50 for third, which is not bad. It's obviously going to be a tough cup because it's all people that did well in other cups, but it's worth playing to sometimes get a bit of money to fund the Hearthstone addiction.
Oh, for sure, man. If you can get yourself into a 16-man cup with prize pool, I mean, that's a pretty good deal.
Yeah. So yeah, I don't know if there's anything more you'd like to mention about the cups. I think we've covered most of it. All the important links will be in the description. Um, I don't know,
Yeah,
so,
I mean, I think we've talked about the cups to death, but I would say, if you enjoy playing Hearthstone and you want to get, more competitive, I think the cups are definitely a great opportunity. Maybe you don't like ladder or you don't have enough time to really grind ladder. You can just spend an evening and play cups. It's a different format, but it's a lot of fun, and you get to play, you get to scratch that competitive itch, which even if you're not pushing to be the world champion, it's a lot of fun.
yeah. Even like if you're not trying to sort of qualify for prelims or anything, it's good to play some cups. It feels nice to get some HCT points, even if you're not necessarily going to qualify. I mean, I originally when I was learning sort of how to play tournaments and stuff like that in like 2015, I think it was. I also entered like a bunch of European cups. Mostly you get kind of crushed because you've still got a lot to learn, but it's definitely an interesting experience. And personally, like I enjoy cups a lot more than ladder. So I definitely encourage everyone to go out and try some European cups or whatever region is your preferred region.
Oh yeah. And even, also like it's great practice if you play in like other leagues or, fireside gatherings. It's a great way to practice that format instead of, you haven't never played that format before and then you're going to have to play, against other people who have. So it's, if you're going to a fireside
Yeah.
gathering, good to practice. You can practice your lineups, you can play against good players and you can really, prepare before you kind of try it out for the first time.
Yeah, it's definitely a very good place to sort of test lineups and give them a run and see how they perform against the meta. Obviously, in local fireside gatherings or local leagues, metas might be a bit different, but you'll still learn a lot about like how to play your decks and sort of how to build lineups.
For sure.
Okay, cool. So I think that's all we really need to talk about. Are there any shout outs or call outs or anything like that that you would like to give, Menlyn?
Oh no, I'm great. Thanks, man. No, shout out.
Okay, cool. Well, like and follow yeah, subscribe, all that jazz on YouTube and Twitter and all that stuff. I'll plug my Twitter, which is down there. Menlyn doesn't have a Twitter because he hates social media, I'm guessing. No, I'm
I'm
kidding.
not very social, eh?
Yeah, I just stick
Yeah.
to cups and online stuff. So yeah, best of luck in your cups for this coming month. Hopefully you can win another one, get some more HCT points on the board for us South African players. And yeah,
Oh,
thanks
thanks, man.
everyone. Thanks everyone for watching. Give us a shout if you have any other questions about the cups or just want some advice. Cheers.